This is the Winter Firehouse Building Committee, August 21st, 2023, at the DeLeo Senior Center. A roll call, Mr. Lettieri.
Here.
Myself. Paul Flanagan.
Here.
Karen Chavez.
Here.
Frank Constantino. Here. Kim Dimes.
Here.
Tom Chudina. Josh Castellano.
Here.
Jill Dorr.
Here.
Town Manager Marino. Here. Larry Powers.
Here.
Chris Boyce. Joe Aiello. Charles Flanagan.
Here.
Jonathan DeMoro.
Here.
If you would stand, join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States of America,
to the republic
Which stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, this meeting is being broadcast live on WCAT. Entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from last week's meeting, August 14th. Motion by Mr. Lettieri, second by Chief Flanagan. Any discussion on the motion?
One correction.
Yes, ma'am.
Tom Judina's name is spelt wrong
I did see that.
on the next to the last page. If we can just correct that.
Yes. We'll make sure that that gets corrected for the record. Any other discussion?
I have one.
Sir.
Every now and then, the word site for eyesight is used instead of site.
Correct. That was, I was going to say cited. That was noted before and will be corrected. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Motion passes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the committee rules and take new business out of order for the first item. Town manager has another meeting to go to after this, and would like to be heard first.
Motion to take the item out of order,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Chavez. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to go out of order. Town Manager Marino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
That's more for CAT than for us.
Is that better? There we go. Now the people at home can hear me. So I was asked to give just an overview of the eminent domain process. So I passed out there's 5 points there, or 5 things we have to do in order to move forward with eminent domain. We're familiar with this process. We just had to do it for the tip project that we have on Revere Street. We had a lot of easements we had to take and things like that. So it's a similar process for that. So what would happen if we were to get a successful vote in November is, first off, the town council adopts what's called an order of taking vote. They would take a vote to describe the properties, in this case the two parcels, the Kirby Funeral Home and the Wadsworth Building. They would take a vote to take those two properties, and which would include, the fee for it, which is the two buildings, and sets forth for the public purpose, and the taking with Mass General Law, Chapter 79. And that would accompany a plan of the property as well. The date of the vote to adopt the taking is the date that appears on the order, but it's not the date that you take the order. Then at that point, it starts the 30-day clock for ticking. So the order of taking must be recorded at the Registry of Deeds within 30 days of the vote of the council. Immediately thereafter, the council must give notice to all parties with an interest in the property, i.e. the property owners and the tenants that are in the building. So at that point, that starts the process for where we're required to do. I mean, we talked last meeting about legally and, morally, but the legal portion is we're required to pay for relocation expenses. So we would talk to each of the tenants, and this would all be worked out beforehand, which is what I'm working on now. We would let the tenants know, one, finding a new home for the meat market is a priority, but there's also other tenants in that building, i.e. the barber shop, the church upstairs, and a few others, to have a plan in place for what they're going to need and where they're going to go and things like that. Within 60 days of the recording at the Registry of Deeds, and this is what I talked about, the town must make an offer to every person entitled to damages of the amount determined to be just compensation. So that's the number we'd work out beforehand. What's just compensation? What's reasonable? What are your relocation expenses going to be? And then that's the money we'd be on the hook for. And that be accepted in full settlement, or what they call pro tanto, which is without prejudice to the party affecting to seek additional damages. So they have the authority, like, we may agree on a price, and then they may come back later and say, oh, no, I think it's worth more. And it was the same issue with Revere Street. Like, we came up with a value for what the easement was worth. If they didn't agree with it, then they come back and they ask for additional funds, and then they'd have to prove their case, and that's their, recourse on that. At that point, once that's all set, the title of the property vests to the town upon the recording of the order of taking it at the Registry of Deeds, and then we own the property. We give the check to the property owners, and then we'd work out whatever relocation expenses. Ma'am, this isn't. There'll be a public comment section, but
Ma'am?
this was talked about at the last meeting.
Public comment will be
Yeah.
further on in the agenda. Yes, ma'am. It's further on in the agenda.
Yeah. That's okay. No worries. And again, I'll hit on that briefly. The way the Wadsworth building sits now will not be the way the fire station sits. The actual apparatus bays where the fire engines will be 100 feet back from the street. There would be a lot more room to maneuver and get out onto that street, a lot more than they certainly have now at Pauline Street and over at the Shirley Street station. So, that's something the fire chief got into last meeting, and we'll get into that again. But this is what I was asked to do, so with regard to the eminent domain process. So I was certainly willing to answer any questions from the committee on the process and if anything I might have missed.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The only question I had, if you could just give a brief explanation, because I've been asked by people, just a brief difference between a 2.5 override and a debt exclusion.
Sure. Simple answer, a debt exclusion has an expiration date. It's you finance the building for 25, 30 years or 20 years, whatever, but there's an expiration. So your taxes are going to go up, say it's $400 a year. That's set for only 30 years, where an override is forever. When you do a Prop 2.5 override for the budget, you're voting it, and that stays in the budget in perpetuity, and then every other Prop 2.5 increase goes on top of that total.
Thank you.
It's probably the
Any
easiest way to
questions for the manager? From the committee.
Just one. You
Mr.
started
Lettieri.
to talk about the process about 4 months, and it could be longer than 4 months, but then you started to talk about the process. If there was a positive vote, what happens next in the timeframe? The 8 to 10 months, the OPM.
Oh, yeah, sure. So right now, we've just got a feasibility study with Kessel and Boos, KBA we call them, Kessel and Boos Architects. They're only doing, the schematic, they're just a overview of the building, what it could look like, why the site works, why it doesn't work. If we get a positive vote in November, the first step would be to hire an owner's project manager or an OPM. They would work for the town, look out for the town's best interest. That goes out for bid. That's a proposal. We get proposals back, and then we pick an OPM. At that point, once the OPM's in place, we would then go back out and hire an architect. It may be Kessel and Boos, it may not be, but we would put it out again to bid, and we'd get all the interested architects in to tell us their design, and then we would interview them. This committee would actually interview all the architects and the OPM as well, and then we have a hand in saying who we're going to hire and which architect we go with. It may not be Kessel and Boos. We may decide somebody else has got a better vision and gets the community better, and and that's who you decide to go with. But once that's in place, then that architect will work with the OPM and the committee, and that's when the subcommittees form. That's when we start talking about what the outside of the building looks like, what the shape of the building is going to be, how far off the road, all that stuff. And that all gets worked out with the architect. Once we get to full, bid drawings and it's ready to go out to bid, which usually takes anywhere from 8 to 10 months, then we put it out to bid, hire a contractor. That'll be a full sealed bid, a sealed bid process. We'll probably file what they call file subbidders, which means you'll have your general contractor, you'll have file subbidders for, plastering, electrical, HVAC. They all bid as, filed subbidders. And then we get ready to construct the building. Best case scenario would be this time next year. Realistically, it'll probably be sometime in the fall. We'd start to, get the buildings down, set the foundation, and then get ready for construction, through the winter months, which would be in fall of '24.
Any other questions, Mr. Constantino?
Tony, can you elaborate on the status for the discussions that you've had with the current property owners on Winthrop Street? Is it tentative? Is it a memo of understanding?
Nope, it's an eminent domain process, so you can't have anything. There's nothing in writing yet. We just know, we know what the appraisals come in at. We know what they're willing to sell for, so we're in that process now. But again, that's going to fluctuate depending upon the landlords and the tenants, so we don't want to put that number out there yet. In this budget, we've allocated, and it was in Pauline Street as well, you know, there's a number out there that you've got in there. It's not in the Kessel and Booth paperwork, but that'll be out in the revised, you know, expense report that we put out there. But we've also got to try to come up with a plan for the meat market, right? So that's tentative, and we don't want to, you know, conversations I've had with them, I'm not ready to go public with yet, but shortly. It'll be in the next few weeks.
And is that information part of the purvey of the presentation that this committee is going to make to the town for their vote, one way or the other?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yep, that'll be in the, yeah. And that'll be, like I said, it's only a few weeks out, but we're not quite ready there yet, so. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the manager? Thank you very much for your time, sir.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
After 30 years, is that 400, that tax is set to go way up to the taxpayers of this town?
Yep, just like the middle school would or any other building. Once the debt, you know, the debt's paid for, then the money in the tax bill goes off.
I won't be around.
Returning back to the agenda, under old business, subject of subcommittees. I think it's a little premature to fill some of the subcommittees, like the building and the finance and the F&F and all. But one of the, we would like to is, staff a subcommittee right now is a public relations subcommittee that's going to help get some of the information out, maybe dispel some of the disinformation or misinformation that's out there. And as the chair, I would like to appoint Josh Castellano, Council President Lettieri, and Karen Chavez as members of the subcommittee on public relations. And the next item under old business is the FAQ brochure that Mr. Castellano was happy to put together. We think he's done an amazing job on this. And the town manager printed one up for each of the committee members. And after discussing this, hopefully this will be made public and put on the town's website as well. All of the members have had a chance to look at this. Any discussion from the committee?
I just want to point out that, you know, it's still a draft form. We still have questions coming in from the public that we want to incorporate. There are questions that some of us have come up that still need to get put in here. And it'll be a concise document. My hope is I would like to offer to this committee an option to put it in the paper that gets mailed out to everybody who's, you know, receiving a copy of the Winthrop Sun script. That's one way of really getting it out to the public, you know, as soon as we can.
Thank you. This is certainly a work in progress and will be added to as this project continues, because more questions will continue to come in, I'm sure. Any discussion from the committee on the brochure?
I guess the only thing and I mentioned this to Josh, on page 9, the 2 questions about the insurance. I was going to ask you about those. If it's right, if the wording is correct, do we actually need it? Could we do it in just one?
I think the first question is certainly more relevant than the second. I wouldn't be concerned with striking the second.
So would you want to strike the second one?
You could combine them or strike them either way, or it could stay in. It's not, it's more, the first question is more relevant than the second.
If it's intended to be informational to the public and they have no idea about these topics, it seems to me that even it may be redundant, but I think it's important for them to understand,
I'm fine with leaving it in.
clarifying it.
Again, I just wanted the opinion of,
Yeah, I'm
The
fine
fire
with leaving it
people.
in. I think the first question is certainly more important, but I'm fine with leaving it in. Ms. Nimes?
In general, I have a question.
I also agree with Frank that I think we need to realize that something that might be relevant to one of us is not what we need to be looking at. We need to realize that it's the relevance to the public and what the questions they are asking. And I think that the more information, the better, really. I think, you know, people can skim through it and they can take from it what it means something to them or is important to them. And I think the more that we can give them, the better. Josh and I kind of discussed over email that taking just even a chart, we could add a chart in here and just give an example of modern-day Firehouse, you know, say we even take localities and what they have in there, what is what the current day, equipment is normal and what we have, X, no, we don't, with Shirley, Pauline, in comparison and just in a simple chart, so the public can see, hey, this is what we should have, this is what we don't have, this is what we don't have, this is what we need, and this, I think that would be a really good way to just show everyone that, hey, this has to happen.
In a few minutes, under new business, we're going to show a video presentation that WCAT put together of the existing conditions in the 2 firehouses that we have now. I don't think it's a stretch to go to a couple of area new fire stations and show as a comparison
Absolutely.
what some of the new stations will look like. I'll certainly get together with WCAT and make that happen.
Thank you.
Any other? Mr.
Just to
Tussle?
follow up on that, page
Sure.
number 9 and those 2 questions, the only check that we should do is that make sure it's factually correct. So if, Mr. Town Manager, you can look at it as well, that would be good. Page 9, question 1 and 2. You don't necessarily have to answer it right now, but just making sure that the public does have, in fact, the information it needs.
Any other discussion on the pamphlet? Council President.
Thank you. And just for the audience and as well as the people watching on CAT, what we're discussing is, it's 25 frequently asked questions that we've heard the most. And Josh put this together, he did an incredible job, and everybody's had input on it. So these are, as of now, 25 frequently asked questions and the answers to them that we think would be helpful in getting information out there. I would like to add, the one question that is not mentioned in here is cost, and I think it's very important that people understand the eventual cost and how it would affect them. So I think that that's something that we should address. And also on page 10, there's a, down at in the middle question, near the end, it talks about the fire station site is 50,975 square feet. That, I believe, includes the police station also. So that includes Kirby's, Wadsworth, and the current police station. So it's not just the proposed site for this. And I think even that following question, it talks about revenues that are generated from the existing buildings, the Kirby site and the Wadsworth building, and I think it's important to put the numbers down and not just to, just mention it without saying that the properties do have a revenue source for the town, but let the town know what that revenue source is.
So you're saying we have values of what they're bringing in?
Yes.
Okay.
So is there any more discussion on the,
It's just now that the council president wants to add a summary of the cost.
I think it's one of the most important. We had a question here already tonight about the cost. I think it's one of the most important things in any debt exclusion, right? How is it going to affect your pocketbook? People
what
live on
about-
fixed incomes and such. I think it's extremely important.
The checklist that Kim mentioned, that could be just very brief, couldn't it?
could be, in some of the codes and
So who
requirements that
would
we
like
have
to
to
take
address
that
too.
on, I guess?
I'm certainly capable of adding that, taking that on.
Okay. Maybe even Ms. Dorr could help you.
I'm sure she will.
Thanks, Karen.
Any other discussion on this? All right, with that, we're going to move on to new business. We took the town manager's presentation out of order, so I'm going to step forward and start a video presentation that WCAT did on the conditions at the existing fire stations.
lights maybe?
Yeah,
Chief?
we're doing that now.
Please let me know if anybody doesn't hear as well. We're here at 40 Pauline Street, Winthrop Fire Headquarters with WCAT for a video presentation, the current conditions of both Fire Headquarters and the Shirley Street Station. As you can see from this photo right here, dated in the late 1800s, this building, other than squaring off the doors to the front of the building, is identical virtually, other than some minor interior alterations. This building was originally designed, as you can see in the photograph, for horse-drawn fire apparatus. As we step inside the building, we're significantly constrained in the fire apparatus that we purchase by the height of the doors, and there's nothing we can do about that. This is home to Engine 2, Headquarters, the Shift Captain, the Fire Prevention Division, my office, and the Department Administration. If you follow me inside, we'll take a look at some of the issues we have here in the building. This building originally had wooden floors with the horse-drawn apparatus, and I'm going to guess the 1940s around. They poured concrete floors in here. The original floors are still underneath, but we have some issues after all of the years through water and infiltration of some spalling in the concrete floors. We store our spare turnout gear in here against OSHA standards because we have no other place to put it. We're significantly constrained in our storage space here in the building. The turnout gear extractor for washing our gear. The dryer for drying the turnout gear. Spare gear stored up here. And the individual lockers for the firefighters' turnout gear. This back here is an exercise room where the firefighters work out. This would never be allowed in modern day fire apparatus, exercise equipment on the apparatus floor. We'll take a trip down to the basement. So in a building like this, we obviously have issues with mold, water, asbestos, rodents, mice, some rats. We've had skunks, we've had squirrels, we've had birds. But as we travel down to the back of the building, well, this would be the front actually. This is our heating system, which we've kept up with through the years, but it's an extremely inefficient wet return steam system, probably designed in the 1920s. When the new floor was poured upstairs, they installed all of these sauna tubes and some I-beams, some steel I-beams. Due to water infiltration through the years, this beam that supports some of the apparatus floor up above is significantly compromised. We have asbestos, old wiring that is still live. As we go into what was the old fire alarm room where we maintained the old fire alarm system. We see more asbestos, more mold, more water infiltration, and up here, antique, non-compliant electricity, which is still alive. So obviously in a building of this age, handicap accessibility is a non-issue. We don't have any access to the second floor. Administrative offices are upstairs. Fire Prevention Division is upstairs. If a citizen wants to come in and pull a permit or see a chief in his office, we have no handicap accessibility. This is our public restroom. If somebody from the public wants to come in and use the facilities, this is our public bathroom. So we'll take a quick trip up to the second floor. The original 1800s, 1880s staircase. And the only thing separating the first floor apparatus bay from the living quarters is this swinging door that's been here since the 1800s. This is the administrative offices of the department, the department clerk, Fire Prevention Division share the same office. Obviously have extremely limited storage space here. We're storing equipment and turnout gear, new turnout gear, because we have no place to store it downstairs. This is the chief of the department's office. We obviously have limited storage space in here, keeping of records, and this is trying to get 21st century technology into a building that was built in the 19th century. Yeah, of course. So this room here on the second floor, there's the sign on the door, says reception room. Back in the day, this is what we refer to as the day room, but for us, this is the only room we have big enough in the department for any formal training that we do. And it's certainly not set up for or adequate for 21st century training. So up here in the attic, we have to make use of every inch of space that we have. We use this for storage, record keeping, and unfortunately, a lot of our radio communication equipment and switching is housed up here in the attic, which is not an ideal environment, as you can imagine, in the summer. Good. That concludes our tour of 40 Pauline Street Fire Headquarters. We're going to take a ride down to 416 Shirley Street. We're now outside 416 Shirley Street, the beach station, also originally built for horse-drawn fire apparatus. This building was built in 1903. That addition to the left, to my left, was added in 1977. This is home to Engine 1 and Ladder 1, the only building in town that we have big enough to store the ladder truck. This is where we also store some of our marine response assets. This is our SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, fill station. Again, some exercise equipment, which again would not be code compliant in a modern day fire station. Like the Pauline Street station, this is our public restroom with no hand washing facility in there. It's non-code compliant. In 2005, when we purchased this ladder truck, it wouldn't fit in the station as it was currently constituted. This floor was, because there's no basement under here, this floor was dug out, the ramp was lowered in order to get this ladder truck into the building. Again, more equipment storage, more turnout gear storage. And we'll go down to the basement. Much like the other station headquarters, we've got water, we have mold, we have asbestos lining these pipes. Again, like the other station, the original floor for the horse-drawn apparatus was wood. These sonotubes and supports were poured, and a concrete floor was added. Again, like the other building, we have rodent issues. We have a monthly maintenance plan with the exterminator. This is the heating system. It's in the process of being replaced again for probably the third time in 30 years. Because of the conditions down in the basement and the fact that we have as many steam leaks as we have, these boilers don't last anywhere near as long as they should. Well, we should get probably 30 years out of one, We're lucky to get 12. Again, a wet return steam system. Again, asbestos wrapped pipes. And this is our $120-year-old hose drying system that we use after a fire to wash all our hose and then hang it in the tower here to dry. And we've been doing this for well over 100 years. This concludes the tour of the 2 existing fire stations here in town. We'd like to thank WCAT for their assistance in putting this together, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Scott, you should have comments from the audience now. I want to apologize to the firefighters. I'm a fireman's daughter. I had no idea, after all these years, of the price of the facility and the living conditions you had to put up with. And it's not that we don't want you to have the newest and latest equipment. We want you to be safe. We want you to be healthy. And I couldn't wait another minute to tell you that that was the best thing you could have done. You need to show that to more people.
Well, that will be available on WCAT. And we're going to continue with public comment in just a minute. But any comment from the committee on the video presentation?
Well done.
Was there a reason we didn't see the living quarters?
The living
Is it
quarters,
privacy, or-
it is a privacy issue because they're always on duty.
Well, I was thinking
And-
about that.
And it was kind of
shower accommodations or anything like that.
we could, but that would be a little bit of a privacy. The only thing I will say, one of the things is, in the cancer prevention is a huge buzz in the fire service, has been for the last 10 years. And one of the things that they stress is they try to use things that monikers that you'll remember is shower within the hour. So when you come back from a fire, they want everybody who's at the fire scene to shower within the hour. We have 1 shower in the station. So if I had 12 guys or 14 guys that showed up, I mean, it's physically impossible for 14 people to shower in 1 shower within an hour. So we have our second female firefighter coming on, going to the academy next month. We have no separate bathroom facilities, no separate dormitory facilities. It's shared space for everyone in the building.
Chief,
that will
I
hopefully be determined.
I just couldn't notice how many times you said code compliant, how non-code compliant you were, how in this, day and age.
A lot of it, given the fact that the stations were 101, 140 years old, and one 120 years old, and one of the big things is the handicap accessibility. I don't see, and I've been there a long time, 30-plus years, I don't see how those buildings could possibly ever be made ADA compliant or OSHA compliant or NFPA compliant. So that's why one of the things we talk about is, renovating those existing stations is a non-issue. And if there's no more comment on that.
I've got one. So Chief, if I had a business in town and I was employing people in those conditions, I'd be shut down immediately.
You would. Fortunate that we haven't had to come to that, but.
Can you do a little add-on to that presentation? Just, again, it's a privacy issue, but maybe just make people aware you only have 1 shower. I mean, I think, to me, that's important. I thought you had at least 3 or 4.
We do not.
To be honest.
We have 1. 1 in each station.
Yes, that's.
If there's no further comment on that, and move on to the next item on the agenda, just to say that I'm not prepared to announce the dates of them, but just to say that there will be 2 open houses. We feel it's important. 2 open houses for the public to come and visit the existing firehouse. The dates and times to be determined later. Hopefully, 1 in September and 1 in October, ideally on a Saturday morning, where we would have people come by. We would open the firehouse. I would have a couple additional firefighters on duty in the event that because they are still in service, if they had to leave the station for a call, we would have a couple extra firefighters on duty to assist with any tours of any concerned citizens.
Good close.
So Sorry?
Said, don't wear your good clothes.
No, don't.
Vaccinated.
With that, we'd like to open up the floor to public comment. Remember, it's public comment, and please step to the microphone.
Tell us who they are.
Hi there, my name is Ginny Sennett, born and bred in Winthrop, and I just wanted to say, I don't think anybody questions that a new firehouse is needed. I mean, clearly, especially when you get the tour, and that was very helpful. My concern is eminent domain. My parents grew up across the street from each other on Neptune Road in East Boston, and eminent domain was never spoken of in our house because their houses were taken. So that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth right off the bat. But also, I have 3 prepaid burial plans with Kirby, so, that was my second worry is, what do we do now? And I agree with the woman who spoke out. I think there are other sites that will not require eminent domain if we really put our minds to it. So that's it. That's my comment.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I agree that we should check out the middle school. It'll be cheaper. Why doesn't somebody check that out? Get a plan over there. They're just going after where the firehouse is over here. I mean, I don't know how bad the police station is. Is it as old? Is it like 1910? I have no clue. No, but don't they want to connect them some way? That's what I heard. Wrong? I don't know. But why don't they get some prices for over here? Because they don't have to take eminent domain. Isn't that public, that land near the hockey rink? They say not to say it, but I'm saying it. Somebody's making money somewhere, right? Keep my mouth shut. I'm in Winthrop. I'm being honest.
My name is Mark Sennett. I live at 17 Girdlestone Road. I'm on the same mind as she is. You're giving the fire, and I guess it's going to include EMS as well. Honestly, the police deserve a new building as well. They really do. Renovating that, I don't think is going to fit the bill, and they're as much a part of public safety as fire and EMS. I think that the police department really deserves a new building as well, because I'm sure they're under the same constraints as the fire department is with functionality of the building.
No, it's not as old. How old is the police? I don't know.
Well, the police department was renovated in 1995-ish? Mhm. Any other public comment?
Are they going to check out what it might cost to go over to Winthrop Middle School? They won't do that, right?
That's all, that's all been addressed already, ma'am. Over the last 5 years.
What happened?
So let's play devil's advocate. Let's say it gets voted down in November. What's Plan B for the town? They're going to do it anyway.
If then we are back to square one.
Because I'm getting the impression that this is going to be shoved down our throats, even if it's
Just
voted
like
down.
I said, it was.
That can't be done, sir. We can't do a building, a project of this capacity without a debt exclusion. It has to be voted on by the taxpayers.
And I just don't think the people of Winthrop are being heard.
No. And the communication between the powers that be and the rest of the town is null and void. I'm really upset about that. I knew nothing about this, about the meetings and stuff. And we have the right to know, we pay the taxes in the town, this is our town, we need to know what's going on. And I'm tired of them taking down beautiful old historical buildings in this town.
The only thing I would say,
It's really, what do we have left?
the only thing I would say in response to that is,
It's about history.
this has been an issue that's been going on in the town for 5 years. We've had multiple public forums here in this room We had multiple presentations done by the architect. I gave a presentation myself in November 2 years ago. This has been an ongoing issue for 5 years. Sir?
Thank you. Stephen Ruggiero, Precinct 6. First of all, thank you all for volunteering your time on this. It's not easy. I understand. And it's a big time commitment, so thank you so much. Also, Chief, that was a great video, and you know, if this doesn't work out for you, you know, you definitely have a spot in Hollywood at some point. That was great. But you know, I just want to say a lot of the questions we heard tonight and a lot of the questions that that the committee talked about, they're sort of the same questions that we've been hearing since the initial presentation to the council. I'm hearing a lot of questions just, you know, day to day, running errands in Winthrop like that, other organizations, meetings, and I'm saying, oh no, wait, you know, the committee's going to come out with something, the committee's going to come out with something, and, you know, everybody will kind of hear everything from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and this is great. Thank you for putting this together. I mean, someone had to do the work to actually put it together, and thank you for stepping up, and, you know, obviously you're not a paid employee of the town, and so just volunteer efforts like this is really what's going to help educate the community. But, you know, I will say, you know, there's a saying that, you know, sometimes indecision is worse than the wrong decision. And so when we're talking about how we're going to communicate this, you know, cast a wide net. You know, don't just say, oh, well, I don't know if Facebook's going to work, or I don't know if, you know, the newspaper's going to work. I mean, there were 12,000 registered voters, and we have to reach out to all 12,000 to make sure that they're all hearing the same information. Tacking on little bits here and there, I mean, I think those are things that can kind of happen after the fact. It's almost more impactful when you, you know, slowly feed out information one at a time, and people can actually say, okay, point number one, okay, wait a minute, there's an update to this. I read this last week, but let me go back and read it again. There's an update. So I think the longer we wait to kind of make some of this information public, the more damage of misinformation and rumors is spreading, not just on the internet, but also, you know, at the coffee shops and at other meetings and wherever people congregate, at the soccer field, at the hockey rink, whatever have you. So I would just say, you know, if there's something, a presentation, materials ready to go, like, let's get it out there, and don't think too hard about how. I think, you know, people consume media and information in a lot of different ways, and so we have to make sure we hit all of them. But a lot of these questions that we've heard from this group of folks, I mean, the answers are somewhere in here, I'm assuming. So, like, let's get that out. Let's start to address some of these quick hits. But thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so used to working in a corporate world. Why don't we get a copy of that one?
It's not ready for distribution yet. It's in draft. So you're going to hand that back to whoever handed it to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to say something.
Oh, no problem. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody knows me. I'm Dawn Mahoney, and I'm a part of this town for many, many years. And yes, I am all for a new firehouse. We need one desperately. I am a firefighter's daughter. My father won the Marty Pierce Medal of Honor, and he died as a result of being a firefighter. I have a brother who's was served. He's a firefighter down in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. He's a chief down there. So I know what you guys go through and what you need. The reason I'm upset is there is not, why do we have to move businesses? We need businesses to stay in this town. There's not enough room. The businesses are being taken away left and right to build more houses and so on and so forth, more buildings that this town is just so big, and it's mostly water. If you look at the specs and the old maps, this town is half water and half landfill. So yes, I believe in a new, but I don't agree with taking the Wadsworth building at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and open it up to the committee for any discussion. Mr. Constantino.
Just to follow on what Don had said, and also Mr. Ruggiero, I think this committee should take into account, and there also should be a question that is part of this booklet having to do with the historic value of the Wadsworth building. The fact is, it was built in 1898, which it makes it the same age, same generation as the fire station. It certainly, and I think, coming from, what some people might consider, an aesthetic footing for yours truly, I think that the larger picture of the character of the town, the historic elements of the town, and some of the business capacities for the community, not to mention the services of a funeral home that are very important. I think all of those things should be addressed in a meaningful way and find the right kind of question that can be put into this booklet so that the public knows when they're reading this that the committee has been thinking about those things and taking that into account against or versus the critical need for the fire for a new fire station. There's no question about the need. The question is where should it be put and why should it be put there. The context, I mean, you have to think of the larger values in addition to the practicalities of a fire station and the values that it's going to bring, not only in terms of the fire prevention to the community, but also the values in which that fire station sits in the community. And those kinds of values do take into account the social aspects, the historic aspects, the visual or the architectural aspects that each of the buildings represent in our town. To ignore that, I think, would be a disservice to the larger community and should be a factor in where and how we position this fire station.
I second that.
Any other comment from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, one thing that I kind of was surprised by tonight was this is going to be jammed down our throat. It took 30 years to build a public works garage in Winthrop. 30 years, all right? Over my lifetime, I've watched a plan to put it where Brothers, across the street from Brothers Restaurant, and that was killed because the elderly, we needed additional elderly housing. They put King Gardens in. Then the town was going to get rid of, as I know at the Highlands School, that's a perfect location. It's out of the floodplain. They can run Shore Drive. They can run Veterans Road. It wasn't a bad spot. No, you got to wait your turn, guys. Then it was a case that when Superintendent Macero was there, this is going to work out perfect. We're going to build a new school. It will be your turn to go down to the middle school site. And now we've actually got to a point where there's a vision to build a firehouse. And I hear people say tonight, they're going to jam this down our throat. We can't do it without you. We're hoping, I used to go to the firehouse. I was there 43 years, and I used to tell the guys, if you can make a friend every day that you work here, you guys will be good. I used to try to make 2 friends so they wouldn't come for me. But the bottom line is the work the fire department has done over the years, there's never been any political messes with them. They've always kept their heads above water. When the chief opened up tonight, showing the picture of the center station, there was a large exhaust fan in the attic. We took that from the Hill Prison. We went down and stripped the Hill Prison when they were going to tear it down. Abe Lincoln was walking the earth when they built the Hill Prison, but it was better stuff than we had. And that's how we kept that place running. Going back to what he said, the chief said last meeting, how did we get here? Well, those 2 firehouses got here to today because of the guys that have worked in them. And right now, we're at an emotional point that we have the opportunity to build a firehouse. When Marie Turner, prior to leaving public office, it was going to be her project to do over the post office, which at that time was an 80-year-old building. They probably did it without enough money, as things often were done in Winthrop. And I think a week before they were due to open, they had no communications in the building. They couldn't finish the radio room, and Massport stepped up to the plate and plate and put in the radio room so they could open, and they were in the basement of Town Hall. So never has this town been overgenerous with public safety. If you look at the two buildings the chief showed you, the two fire engines in the center station, one of them is a truck that we borrowed from Boston 3 years ago. And they've let us keep it, so if we have something that goes out for maintenance, that truck stays in reserve. So again, you know, as I sit in the committee, and again, I'm not here to brag, it was a way of life, the fire department for me. They often ask me, how do you get so fast with those little short legs on the track team? It's because when I was 13 years old, I'd run down Ocean Ave and jump on the truck as it went by because I had a bell in, my father had a bell in the house. So with that, we don't want to make a single enemy at these meetings. We need you to embrace it. Everybody in that building, I go to Patsy's. What I've spent at Patsy's, I could build a firehouse. But I just need everybody, or the chairman, or this whole board, or the community, need everybody to get together. Let's stick together, get it done without hurting anybody. And if we're not reaching out enough, we will. And, but we have never been so close. And we've always been promised. When they did over the police station, don't worry, boys, your turn's coming. And we've always been the ones, never blinked, okay? We'll keep the stations running. And the chief will tell you, he was my pump operator for 20-some-odd years, and would get a call from the beach station that their CO detectors were going off. And we'd tell him, am I lying? Open the big doors. It's because the chimney on, what would he say, the northwest side had collapsed, and that big boiler you see couldn't vent. So we're telling the guys that are on duty, public safety, to open up the windows and the doors so the CO would clear. So, I mean, it's not even something that we can kick down the road 6 months or whatever. We're hoping, and again, I appreciate the work the Historical Society does, and we're going to give you 2 buildings, as Mr. Constantino said, that are as historical as the Wadsworth. And I would love the chief to do another video like he did tonight and walk through the Wadsworth. It's got a beautiful facade, but the building above the first floor is useless to any modern business. It's all cut up. They did put an elevator in because they had another thing in mind a few years ago. But you have to look at the big picture. People say you can't get your apparatus out in the street. You're talking to people that have been doing it for years. It's not the lay people that tell us we can't get our apparatus out. But we're hoping you were here tonight, you're concerned citizens. We're not the enemy. We're not looking at you folks as the enemy. We need you to work with us and get this done. And that's all I have to say.
Is there any other comment from the committee? Council President
And just to
Lettieri.
address it, because there were a couple questions and we really haven't addressed them, but in terms of the police station, there is a phase 2 that will be shown over the course of the next month. And one of the key attributes of this location is the connectability to a police station. We know that there's a need and will be a need in the near future for a police station.
Like I said, I just think that they deserve as much.
They absolutely do.
I mean, honestly, public safety building is a great idea, but a building doesn't make it safe. The people inside that building make it safe.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
They do. And there is a phase 2 that will show a connectivity and show a proposed house down the road. The other thing that was obviously on our minds when we were thinking about that is the cost, right? And, you know, the cost is substantial. It's a lot of money. I mean, you look at some of the costs of other buildings that have gone up.
And honestly, I'll be honest, from what I hear around town, it's the eminent domain piece of it that's really wrong. Okay? You know, we spend, what do you spend on maintaining that middle school annually? $200,000 to $250,000 a year, right? Because you have to heat it in the winter, you have to keep it viable for whatever your future plans are. So, you know, 8 years. maintaining that building. And the people are just sitting there going, why can't we just put it there? And that's just from what I hear around town. It's like, why can't we just put it there? And I know that the town council has other plans for the building. Okay, honestly, they're just not listening to the citizens. The town council just isn't listening to the citizens, in my opinion.
I do think, and I can't speak for the whole council, I do think the council listens to the people. I honestly believe they do.
This is not, this
You know, I'm
is not a
hoping that
back
the
and
address,
forth.
that these will be addressed in the short-term future, right? And you know,
Because I think you need to keep the building, no doubt.
no doubt about that. Thank you.
It's just, I think there has to be a compromise.
All right. Is there any other comment from the committee? First public hearing, I don't have the date for it, so.
September 11th.
September 11th. Okay, with no further comment, next week's meeting will be next Monday night, August 28th at 6 p.m. here again at the Senior Center. The first public forum for a question and answer from all the public will be September 11th. Again, tentatively at 6 p.m., but that will be at the high school.
We're not sure. High school depends with back to school and they go
Well,
for
okay,
fall
so it
break.
could be here, it could be at the high school. The actual location and time to be determined. But the first public forum is scheduled for September 11th.
I just wanted to say something real quick if I could. My name is Scott Mahoney Wright. I live in Precinct 3. I get everybody's concerns about the location of the fire station. Watching that presentation, we can all agree our fire departments it's inadequate. The equipment, the buildings, everything that was presented tonight needs to be addressed. From a personal perspective, I lost my first house in May of 1993 to a fire, electrical. I lost everything. All my personal possessions, my clothing, my furniture, my house is gone. I had to rebuild from the ground up. The fire department was able to save every other home around mine because they had the fire department that was efficient, that they could store their equipment, their trucks. The firefighters had safety training rooms. They had everything they needed. And if the residents had not stepped up to vote for construction of that fire station, the old fire station was completely inadequate. So while I lost my home, I'm grateful for the fire department because they saved everybody else around me. And if it wasn't for the residents of the town going through the process of figuring out the best roadmap to get to that new fire station, you know, other people could have been in the same predicament I was. So for me, it's very personal, and watching what the fire department here is having to deal with, not in one location, but two, to me as a resident and as a taxpayer, is completely unacceptable.
Okay, any other comment from the committee? If none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Motion by Mr. Powers, seconded by Chief Flanagan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll see you next Monday night.
It was quick.